The first serious job I ever wanted was to become a journalist. I always have been and still am a huge news junkie. Sometimes I think I probably consume too much news. In my first year of university, I took an intro to sociology class, and that kind of changed everything. I fell in love with understanding how our society works and the inequalities that shape it. I think coming from an indigenous family, I was already aware of how some groups are given more privilege than others. So my interest in these social issues isn't just academic, it's personal. I deeply empathize with the people I see on the news who are struggling. At times, I catch myself being judgmental towards those who seem indifferent and don't seem to care. But I also recognize that most people are just trying to get through life the best that they can. Many of us feel overwhelmed, and when we're caught up in our own pain, it can be hard to connect with others, and I include myself in that. I truly admire those who choose careers grounded in empathy and compassion, like social work. In this episode, I sit down with my friend Rahim Thawer to talk about how we support others, whether through our work, our everyday lives, or even just by being kinder to ourselves. This is Mask Off for Mask, and I'm Vance. All right. Hello, everyone. So, Rahim Thawer is a social worker and psychotherapist who has lived and worked in Toronto for most of his life. He provides consulting services and clinical supervision in his private practice while also working as a post-secondary sessional lecturer. Rahim is a queer Muslim community organizer and an emerging writer. His approaches to psychotherapy, teaching, and community development continually consider and examine the intersections of systematic oppression and mental health. Hello, Rahim.
Hello, Vance. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I am doing okay. I am doing okay.
Yeah.
These are
Well,
these are tough times.
we were just talking about you're in Alabama.
I'm in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I moved here in August to teach. And so I'm actually no longer a sessional lecturer. I'm a full-time instructor, and I teach social work courses here at the university. And I'm also doing a doctoral program. Yeah, and my life in Toronto it's non-existent at the moment, although of course it's still home.
Can I ask when did you get to Alabama?
In August of 2024.
Can I ask you is there a huge difference in the environment, energy of people from last summer to where you are now, where everyone is right now?
Yes, yes. I think so. Being in the American South, first of all, as a Canadian, I think the people I follow on social media and the conversations I have, people were quite critical of different political candidates before the 2024 election, right? And of course, it was Kamala and Trump that were running. And I think from a Canadian perspective, we were like, they both probably will do terrible things, but Trump will be more terrible, you know? And there's a lot of fear in Canada, but also there is a bit of detachment. Whereas here, I work in a social work department where, like, the idea of having a black woman as president meant something very different, I think. People are not detached to it. That would have meant something very specific to people. And in the South, where they've had to fight for civil rights, the Southern United States is where this idea of white supremacy is very specific. Like, people have a nostalgia for slavery. That's the kind of thing that they want to go back to. And so, yes, it does feel different because people are anxious. People are worried about their rights being clawed back. I think they're worried about, like, the image of grandparents or ancestors working on a cotton field is not so far back for them. And so the anxiety about the political situation is intense for that reason.
So in the social work department or the people that you're working with and doing your program with, is there more of an intensity of wanting to be more active in their activism or their work?
Yeah, I came at an interesting time because for my students, a lot of them are very engaged and they want to know, like, what does activism look like? how can we make change? How can we make things better for our country, our communities, our state, our city, all that kind of stuff? You've seen, I'm sure, by now that there's all this attack on diversity, equity, inclusion. For Alabama, that's not new. That was announced last spring, and October 1st, there was a law that went into effect already, like October 1st, 2024, that bans any state funding connected to diversity, equity, inclusion. So we've already been preparing as teachers, as academics, to think about what that looks like in our classroom. Like if it's against the law, then what does that mean? So we've been thinking about being cautious, I think, before maybe other folks in the country. And so I think in our department, we're less panicked. We're concerned, but less panicked. I feel like we've been preparing for it for a while. I think there's a lot of things that feel unpredictable. Will we have funding? Will jobs be taken away? We send our students to go do like field education where they go work in like a nonprofit organization or a health center or something like that. And we're like, what if the funding to even serve those people is cut off or deemed inefficient or something, Then what happens? So yeah, there's like fear. I wouldn't say panic, but I would say there's fear. I think queer and trans communities are particularly afraid as well. Just the ongoing onslaught of like this like gender ideology, blah blah blah. All this nonsense. So it's a scary, kind of a scary place, but we're getting through it.
Yeah. Well, what do you tell when you said your students ask you, what does activism look like? What do you tell them?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Or what would you say, not even to, I mean, you can answer that too, but not even to students that are doing social work programs, but just people in general. What would you tell them about how to be active in their activism or social
Yeah.
work?
Look, activism is a big word. And if somebody calls me an activist, I'm like, am I an activist? I don't know. Like, cause like the work I do is for the social good or it's like for a collective cause, but I get paid for it. If I get paid for it, is it activism? So I kind of question that language. I'm not sure, but I think activism can look like so many things. And in the current world, I think social media is a big part of what activism looks like. And so I would say like, that's great, but I'm in a higher ed institution and I would say like educating yourself. Every time you have a question, Google it. Go to ChatGPT. Go look up academic articles. Like you have access to that. Like if you have access to real information, let's learn as much as we can about things that you're passionate about, things that affect you personally. Cause that somebody can't take away from you. I was recently moderating a panel and one of the researchers said she's a white woman, she's always lived in the South, and she said, in this moment, it's really important for me to stay connected to people I disagree with. She's like, it's because if I just decide that I'm going to cut people off, then those are people I'm not going to have conversations with. And conversations and relationships, I think, are the only way we're going to see change, is if we see each other as human. And I thought, that's quite profound.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like I'm from rural Saskatchewan.
yeah.
I think in this time I've really had to I made an intention to humble myself and try to always say to myself, I don't know the right way to live. I'm not going to say I'm right. I don't want to be that person that just says, my way of living is right and your way is wrong. But if I take it personally and get wrapped up into that, then we're not going to get anywhere. Now we're just arguing.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. How does it feel for you to go back to visit rural Saskatchewan?
It's always been like, I will say, I had a great time growing up when I was a kid, like a little boy.
Yeah.
But my teenage years were really hard. And my theory on that is because I think once everyone had the idea of what being gay was and is, like the other kids, then it kind of became this, oh, okay, Vance is different, Vance is gay. Whereas before, I think I was just maybe like flamboyant and it was funny and no one really thought anything of it. So I feel like sometimes when I go home and just being in the environment of the town that I'm from, not so much like my mom and dad and like
Yeah.
you know, but I notice how I go into fight or flight and my body changes the way that
Yeah.
I behave when I'm there because I've learned to I had to be safe to be in those spaces.
Right. Look, I think there's connections. So when you're in flight or fight, your brain is making all kinds of connections, right?
Hmm.
About to help you understand why your body is in a stress response. And while we don't want to invalidate that, it is an important moment to say, am I actually at risk? And the person
Does
who
that ever happen? Does that happen to you?
yes, yes, ma'am. It does happen to me. And I think and so that's what I was gonna tell you, like it's from my own experience is like taking a step back and saying like, I don't actually know what they're thinking, but I do feel like at this moment I am like relatively safe. I can't predict the future. Like if somebody wants to be very violent towards me, like I can't predict that that's gonna happen or not. I do know that as an adult, I don't like I could calm the part of me that feels stressed out and tell myself things that you just said, like they want a good life. Their anxiety is slightly misguided because somehow they think I represent a barrier to the life they want, or they see me as a symbol of what's wrong with the world. But you named it. It comes from a place of fear, anxiety, maybe even grief about what they want their life to be, what it's not. And the other thing is, like, whether it's rural Saskatchewan, it's somewhere in Alabama, like, if you do think for the most part you're safe, your visibility is important. You know, like if somebody looks at you and they're like that guy looks gay, that's kind of a good thing in a way because there's other gay people wherever you are, and they need us to be visible, right? So in that like that kind of visibility is activism. We could even think about like being in touch with and managing some of these trauma responses as being part of your activism because it allows you to be visible. It allows you to see yourself as worthy. It allows you to stay grounded to some degree, to have conversations with people and explore the world in a way where the anxiety is dialed down a bit.
Well, that's, I always say that, like, even through my work as a somatic intimacy coach, like, the goal that I have for everyone is not to, here, I'm going to give you the best orgasm, or I'm going to get you a boyfriend, or whatever. It's about how do you feel free in your body, which feels there's an ease to being in your own body, right? And so that's where I'm always trying to get to that place of understanding, like, okay, well, why am I out of that easeful place? And why am I not feeling safe?
Mm,
And, why am I in my head about certain things? But if I'm able to feel sexual, feel pleasure, feel intimacy with another person, then all of those things are a practice. And somehow I got to that place of feeling safe to just be, right? And I think there's a
yeah.
lot of people that are not in that place, and
Yeah.
so that's how your brain works, right? Is that your brain will look for what is the danger. And since we're all kind of in this stress, everyone's stressed out, life is very uncertain, politics is very uncertain for everybody,
Yeah.
that there's a lot of us that just don't have the tools to be able to come back to that place of, oh, I'm actually really safe right now. Yes, maybe
Right.
things are going to happen and I'll have to deal with them when they come up. But right now in this moment, I need to come to a place of safety that I can create, right?
Yes. Look, I think being in your body and doing this somatic work you do, you talk about like getting to a place and going to a place. This word place is very important because it says to me that you have an idea about what calm feels like. You have an idea of what safety and having your guard down feels like. And in your work, you see that having that guard down and the stress contained as the gateway to intimacy and connection. I think for a lot of folks, they don't necessarily know what that place is in their mind. They're like, calm down and go to what place? What are you talking about? And that's going to lead to, if I feel calmer inside, that's going to allow me to feel better in my environment and connect with people. Which people? Like, you have you have kind of have a blueprint or a roadmap for that. And I think a lot of folks don't. So
Well,
in
that's
that
not
way.
the
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I mean that's not the way our society is designed to like the social messaging that we all get, right? Is that you always need to be working on something to better yourself or to be
Yeah.
working towards a goal or your body's not good enough, so you should be working out now, right? Instead of just being like, okay, wait a minute. I need to like get to this place of like even meditation. Like when I first started doing yoga, I had never known what it felt like to be like, oh, you can actually just practice this for 5 minutes, where you can just practice the feeling, getting to the feeling of you don't have to do anything right now. You can
Yeah.
just be. And so lots of people don't do that. Lots of people will hear the voice in their head of like, oh, well, you know what? I need to be making more money to get to this, or I need to be having more of this stuff or doing these things. And
Mhm.
like, I mean, that's what I always say is that I wish that all schools would just implement mindfulness in like kindergarten, right? Because if you could just learn the tool of being able to be like, I'm anxious, okay, I'm gonna take deep breaths and then just start
Yes.
to practice it then. But most people don't do that, right?
You know what? I think some schools might be doing some of that work. I think it's
Yeah,
changed a lot since you and I were
yeah, yeah,
school age
yeah, yeah.
kids. But even if you learn it as a kid, I think adults struggle with giving themselves permission for like rest, deep connection, stress regulation, going to a place of playfulness, all of that kind of stuff.
I was thinking about when you were talking about that, that I think also because I just work with queer men, that the reason why I see the difference between men and any other gender is that the box that men have to be put in is so small, and
Yeah.
men are always trying to get themselves into that place. And I mean, a lot of the issues, there's a lot of sociological issues with masculinity right now that are starting to come up. But I mean, if you look at, you know, any of these politicians, dictators, and all that that are in power, I'm like, these guys are not at a place of ease and are just like, oh, I'm so grateful. Look at how well life is going. It is
Yeah.
this overdrive, constant need to dominate, to show your power, to gain more power.
Yeah.
The crazy thing that I think I see is that sure that exists. I know that that exists, but
Yeah.
how much of society doesn't see that as a negative, that looks
Totally.
at that and sees, oh, that's normal. That's what we should be striving for.
Right. Right. And yeah, totally. So there's like a constant threat, an imaginary threat sometimes being constructed by dictators, and then they show us their power in all of its masculine glory. That's in quotes. And so if they're not teaching us to be stressed out about our security or something, they are teaching us or socializing us inadvertently about what powerful masculinity looks like. And all of it is just so damaging. I think earlier when you were talking about this hamster wheel of self improvement, I think that's also so. It works for some people who are like, okay, I'm going to go to yoga every day. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. That's me taking care of myself. But there's a whole group of people that it just doesn't work for, where you're like, I'm having trouble integrating this into my life. And you said a beautiful thing where you're like, you could do this for 30 minutes, you know?
I think I even said 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Brain, yeah. Even breathing, like when I think about meditation, I'm like, I'm not doing this for a long time. I can't like, but if you say to yourself, like, this is a practice, it's a muscle, you have to build it slowly, 1 minute, 2 minutes is enough, then you're kind of in a different place, Where self improvement isn't about like protein shakes and rigidity and like a strict schedule, discipline. It can be that, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be like being gentle with yourself, creating some spaciousness for calm, to feel connected to your body, to have a bit of movement. That could be enough. Because if you're regulated, a bit more regulated, it'll support you. Yeah.
Well,
So in that way, that's activism, I
yeah.
guess, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, even like for me, so for example, I haven't had a drink this year yet. And it's funny because I've gone long spans without drinking before and tried to do it. And I'm getting to this place where drinking just makes me feel so awful
Mm.
after that I'm getting to a place of like, this is just not worth it to even have in my life. But I always try to do this 100% abstinent and of everything. And when I do that, then there's a bit of this like, yes, I'm bettering myself and it is better for me. But then there becomes this like ego thing of I'm doing this so I can be like super healthy and everyone's gonna be like, oh, look at how healthy and fit he is and he doesn't even drink. And because you get that when you do that. But then I'm like, okay, well, this isn't like I can't ever maintain this because shit is going to hit the fan and I'm not going to be able to be like going to the gym 100% like stress free and all that stuff. So right
Yeah.
now I don't drink, but I still smoke pot. And I'm like, oh, the smoking pot takes the edge off when I'm wanting that drink, but the effects of pot on me are so much less than what drinking does. Like it's
Yeah.
manageable, right? So I'm like the side effects are very minimal in comparison to drinking. And at first it was like, oh, you're not doing this right because you're not doing it like you should be sober from everything. Like you're still using something, you're not doing it right. And then I realized, but wait a minute, I feel way better just cutting the drinking out. So it was this thing of I have to look at myself and go, wait a minute, this is working. So this is working. This is working for you. Whatever this plan program that you're on with using pot
Yeah.
instead of drinking has really helped me to feel better in general. So it has become this thing of I'm doing this, yes, to better myself so I can be a more sane individual with this work in my life to show up, to not be anxious and depressed the whole time that's preventing me from doing anything. Right. And so I'm like, okay, this is actually helping me to be in a good place where I can be a good support to myself and to everyone else. Right. The difference is that like you're doing it because of what other people think, right? Which is I think a lot of what the self-improvement world is of I'm going to better
Totally.
myself so
I
I
think,
seem better.
yeah, yeah. Vance, you described it in kind of such a beautiful way. Like, it really demonstrates how insidious the ego and the moral superiority, like how that creeps in. Like the I'm better than you. And
Mhm.
I got my shit together, you know? But what underlies it is like this black and white, all or nothing thinking that entraps you a bit,
Mhm.
right? And you're like, well, that's hard to maintain. But part of what's keeping me going is feeling better than other people. And that's like, it's not the worst. Like, it's getting you through, but it's, if you feel like you're better than people, they're going to pick up on that, and that's not going to feel good for them. And I'm glad you brought up the example of alcohol because I stopped drinking a little while ago in July 2023.
Yeah.
And it was really tough. The first several months were very tough. But
Could I
I've
ask
also
why?
wondered, like, in moments when I'm having a tough time and I'm like, oh, I just really want to be drinking again. Like, that was so fabulous, you know? I also think about, like, the all or nothing and, like, but then I have to let go of my moral superiority.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then then what do I have? Because, and I say insidious because I think it creeps into becoming part of your identity in a way, the change you're
Mhm.
making. Um, it's just tricky. I don't think it goes away, but it's something you just have to be aware of because you don't want to make people feel bad. Because reality is like I also want to be having a drink. Like I'm not better for not drinking. Like it's better for me, and
Mm.
overall, I'm like doing better as a human without alcohol. But I'm not better than the person who drinks regularly or drinks socially. Or I'm not better than like I've. In fact, I wish I could be them.
Yeah.
You know, if you're like able to have just a couple drinks and not spend more money than you have, or you're able to drink and limit yourself and not feel awful. I'm not better than you. I envy you. That's great.
Mhm.
That's not my story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. I mean, that's the same with me too. Is and I mean, all this stuff about what we're talking about activism is this idea of like self-awareness of why am I actually doing things.
Mm.
So, right, like even people who are very loud with their activist work sometimes can be virtue signaling or doing it because I'm like, is this coming from a place of I actually care and want to do some right, or do I just want people to see me and have all the accolades of being like, wow, look how good of a person she is. She's always speaking up for people, right? And I
Yes.
think, the thing that I've learned is, or how I try to do any of this stuff is I try to just speak on the things that I know and the things that I can, in my own experiences, talk about. So, like, my family is indigenous, and so I'm Métis, so I obviously am white passing. But like, I have my whole family's experiences of what it's like to be indigenous,
Mm.
that I understand, like, oh, what they went through, the social issues that they've had to face, and the inequalities and all that, right? And so I'm like, oh, actually, I think a lot of times I don't have to be really loud about this is what the government needs to be doing and da da da. Is that I can just be like, oh, well, this is actually just my story, and this is actually what happens because this is what I know. And if people could even just understand that and
Yeah.
see like, oh wow, I didn't, I didn't even know that stuff was going on. Like, well,
Yeah.
I also I wonder if that a lot of people that, well, I know that we use social media as become kind of this replacement for intimacy and connection. It's way easier for us to offload about what we're angry about and get a
Right.
bunch of likes than it is to actually, phone up a friend and be like, "Hey, do you have a minute? I'm really stressed out."
Yeah.
So I think we're using it as this, like, I don't even use the word crutch. It's like this replacement.
Yeah. Well, maybe we need, you were talking about teaching kindergartners about breathing and grounding. We might need education on like the connection between like managing emotions in a digital world and awareness of like clicks, clicktivism and activism, thirst traps, like just to become better consumers of all of that and to be aware of ourselves so that we're not like, I'm this empty vessel just scrolling, responding, feeling uncomfortable, feeling uncertain, avoiding. Like, we need to bring some emotional awareness and language and literacy to participating in the digital world. Because it's not just looking at our phone, it's a whole other world in the phone, right? And a big part of us is like in it. Yeah, and I think to your point about your approach where you're like, something's going on in my community or my family and I want to let people know, but I don't want to be angry at them for not already knowing. If I can wait till I have a little bit more access, a balance between my logical brain and like my emotion, when that's a bit more in balance, I can put something out there that will actually raise awareness or could actually do some good. You know?
Well, can I ask you, do you ever feel frustrated and like, why aren't people doing enough? Or how do you feel about that?
Sometimes I do. I think for those of us who are like on the internet all the time, I think we don't realize how big and how giant that world is with its own subcultures, its own enclaves where people connect. And the other thing we don't realize is just how many people are not part of that digital world. Like when I'm frustrated, I'm like, how is everybody voting for this person? Or how does nobody care about this issue? Well, because we've left it to social media. We've left it to the news. We've lost something. There needs to be more community engagement, more connection if we want to understand why people think the way they do. So yeah, like I'm frustrated all the time, but I'm not outraged when people have been posting about Palestine and Gaza, all year. Like I don't feel frustrated by that. I feel like I reshare what I can. I feel anxious. I feel depleted. I feel sad. I feel like it's all important. But I'm also I notice I'm like, okay, I'm losing steam here. Like, oh, this is heavy to read, you know? Mm. And that's just a normal part of it. So I'm not really frustrated. I think I'm more just like noticing that people have loud voices and they're still not being heard. So I mostly feel helpless and hopeless more than I do angry or frustrated.
Yeah. I mean, I think I try to feel, I mean, well, obviously I feel emotional about these things, but again, to the logic part that I always think, I was listening to, I think it was Ezra Klein, but he was saying, another podcaster was talking about how, how a lot of people will say now, like, oh, I'm not going to have kids because the world is in such a shit place. And he said his point was that's bullshit because people were having kids in like the 1700s when like there was like a 50% chance that kid was going to even survive.
Right.
But like people were always having kids and not caring about like, oh, what's the world going to be like in 100 years? But it also reminds me of how there's always going to be shit. And if
Yeah.
you are frustrated that things aren't different, there's a way of looking at it, of being emotional and really caring about what other people are going through and struggling with. But
Yes.
there's also a way of looking at it in this kind of, what are you laughing at?
So I'm laughing because every time somebody tells me they're pregnant or they want kids, I am always like, okay, but have you heard about climate change?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm that person. And it's so funny that you're saying this because my friend Faith, who is also Indigenous Métis, she wanted, like, she has, like, I think her child is probably like 4 or 5 now. But when she was like saying she wanted to have kids, I was like, Faith, do you know about climate change? Because that's my line. And she's like, I do, my friend. But also, I don't think it's going to be anything my people haven't already dealt with.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, you know what? Great. You probably should have kids. That's
Yeah.
a great
Yeah. Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. I think on the
Go
what I
ahead.
would
Yeah.
say is like I think on the like if you were to compare it to like oh the society as a whole in comparison to like just me as a person. So like for me as a person, I can decide to the drinking thing is a great example. I can decide to live my life and just keep drinking and doing whatever and giving into every impulse. And I probably will still be alive and going through my life. Like that's going to happen no matter what, but it's probably going to be really messy. There's going to be lots of like it's going to be a big mess, right? And I think a lot of times with the world right now is that the world is going to exist no matter what we do, right? Like climate
Yeah.
change will happen and things are going to change. It's what has happened for billions of years, right?
Mhm.
But it's just how much of this are we going to take responsibility and be like, okay, we can't live in this life that's just full of it's supposed to be about stuff and consumerism and just giving
Right.
into every impulse of whatever we want because this is obviously not working and it's going to be a big fucking mess as it is right now. So when are we going to be like, okay, can we all just take a moment and take a breath and learn how to communicate, have these conversations and have ideas for what society and the world needs to do to just be a little bit more stable, right? Like this
Yeah.
fighting over it's got to be our way or our way. I don't care what your way of
Yeah.
living is. You
Yeah.
go do you. But can we just agree on like how do we each have a home to live in? How do we each have food to eat? Like
Yeah.
how do we have
Totally.
access to a livable wage, like all of these things that are real issues that could change all of our lives instead of being fighting over all this messy shit that is
Yeah.
just creating more noise.
No, I hear you. I think when we think about that example I gave of like my friend Faith who had a child and I said this thing to her, what really strikes me is at the time I was making an assumption that the person wanting to create a family in this very particular way has bought into some kind of utopian narrative while
This is your
neglect
friend
yeah,
you're talking about? Okay, yeah.
yeah, while neglecting to be connected to activism or social issues or realities on the ground. And that's like not true, right? And I knew that about her, but I hadn't made this connection. And I think when we get angry with people for, being Costco lovers or like getting a new package from Amazon every day or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we don't necessarily know them, but I think what we get angry about is we're thinking this person's probably prioritizing their own comfort and their own dream and creating as much of an insular bubble full of things, children, busy work, whatever it is, to create distance between themselves and things that are important, like food security, housing, healthcare. And I don't think we can make that. I think we have to take a step back to be like we can't just make that assumption
Mhm.
because in truth we're all participating in that world to create a bit of comfort for ourselves while we stay plugged into the things that are important. I think as a queer person who doesn't anymore anyway, I don't think about like I don't want to have kids or for the most part I don't want kids and I don't care that much about getting married. not that I'm dating anyone, but if I were even,
Mhm.
I don't care that much about getting married. And I think when see other folks making a fuss about those things, or it's such a big part of their lives, I think the reaction to criticize them comes from a bit of a wound of like having to be in a place, in a position in the world where I grieved that. I was like,
Mhm.
that's a dream. I bought into it too. I grieved it. Why are you still romanticizing it? They're romanticizing it because it was designed for them. So it
Yeah.
makes sense. I don't need to be angry at them. I need to just recognize that like my wound has been reopened. They're making choices that like are going to get celebrated in a way that my life choices might not. That's just like the world. Oops.
Yeah.
And so that means like I'm in a place of grief, and that's better than thinking I need to be angry at them for whatever their life choices are.
And so for me, even I'm like, I've been in relationships. I like being in relationships, but I'm also okay with being single. And also I just try to understand that idea of, I mean, I never had an idea of like a white picket fence life that I was like, I want to get married and have kids, and that's the goal. It kind of never was. And I remember even in like, I think it was in grade 7 or 8, and we were doing some, I don't know what the fuck the schoolwork was, but the question was, imagine your dream home. And so rural Saskatchewan, everyone's like, picturing, a farm or like
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
house.
yeah.
And I just, in my mind of like loving friends, was like, I would love an apartment living across the hall from your friends. That sounds awesome. And so that's what I said. And everyone made fun of me because they were like, an apartment. I was like, well, that seems funner than like this idea of like having a bunch of kids and like living like I already have that.
You
And so I
know,
think I was always imagining myself outside of like, oh, something seems more exciting. Jennifer Aniston is having more fun in that apartment that I'm
yeah,
having
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on this acreage.
Totally.
But I think that I
I
think
hear
that
that.
this idea of is like, yes, totally, whatever the picture of it is, like let go of because what we need is community. We want
Mm.
connection and community in whatever that way that looks like. And this idea that society sells us of, oh, if you get married, there, you found your person and you don't have to do any more work. So like you're gonna be good and you'll be fine with your family because you won at life. You accomplish all the checklists of what you're supposed to
Yeah,
do. But
yeah,
that's not the way it works. So like you
yeah.
always have to be connecting, finding community, finding chosen family. Like that's
Mm.
happening for everyone no matter what. We just have these ideas of things that we're supposed to get that's going to take away all our problems and loneliness and I think that a lot of people that like how you said, the people that are wanting that and not caring about, social issues, I think a lot of times too a lot of those people maybe like they haven't they don't come from a minority maybe or they don't even understand
Yeah.
these things so like that is the challenge of their life is getting these things done and they don't even recognize how maybe someone who is in a residential school is like fuck I don't even give a shit about that stuff because I just wanted to like live a life that was
Mm.
relaxed and safe and secure, right? And had to do the work to get to that place. So I also understand it's not that people don't care, it's that people don't even know that there's these other issues that are more important because
Yeah.
they just see the thing that they don't have and it's, they're just doing what society has taught them to do.
Yeah. I think a couple things really stood out to me as you were speaking. One was, well, the latter part, actually. I was thinking about how a traumatic, confined, stifling situation or context could make you so unaware of other things going on because your dream is for rest, for relief, to get out. And that makes complete sense. And the person who has a very insulated life and isn't connected to other things, not because of trauma, but because of like the luxuries of wealth and comfort on like a human level, I can get why they like have a lot to learn. It's frustrating to see.
Mhm.
But those two people are in like very different camps, you know? The person who's insulated because of their luxury and their comforts, if I wanted to connect with them, even if it's frustrating, I need to think about like, how are they thinking about progress? How are they thinking about milestones? Who are they comparing themselves to? Because that's what's going on in their world. And recognizing what's important to them isn't like the way we connect with people, by seeing what's
Mm.
important to them. And I think we have a hard time. I also have a hard time, trying to relate to the things that are important to people when it's so far from my experience, you know?
Mm.
And I think the family, the kids, the house, the dog, the expansion of property or property ownership, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this is like, I get the things you want, but like, girl, not that creative. Also, maybe at the expense of other people. So, like, I can get
Yeah, yeah,
judgmental,
yeah.
but what I'm even just reflecting on as we're talking is the importance of discernment and making. I have to make a bit of a conscious decision. Like, am I getting triggered by what this person wants? And as a result, am I not having conversations with them? Is there some value to having them in my life? Like if they're an awful human, no. But if they're
But I
decent
think
human, yeah.
Yeah, but I think also to that I try to be like, it doesn't mean that I have to be friends with that person. Cause like even a lot of times, so I'll notice like my trauma of like growing up, it's not even really trauma, just like growing up in rural Saskatchewan. So when I moved to Toronto, I was like, oh wow, people who especially who grew up in Toronto, maybe had a little bit more money.
Mm,
And so I noticed too, when like it's like Christmas time, and I'll be on social media, and I'll be seeing everyone in their families' homes, and I'm like, oh, you were rich, and I get really judgmental. And so I've actually a lot in the last, actually just recently, I've really started to face my shit about like money, security, and all that stuff, and being like, oh, there's like a deep wound thing where I can't judge
yeah.
people for being, I assume I know their entire lives because they have a nice house that they grew up in. Well, maybe, but also at the same time, I feel like for myself, because I had to be financially independent and just independent with everything. Like as soon as I graduated high school, I was out of the house like a month later. But what that gave me was freedom. Like I didn't have someone saying, this is who you need to be and do all this to be worthy of a human being. I just was like, I want to do what I want. I want to live my life in the way that I do. And I didn't have any parents or people that were like, no, you got to go to school. We're paying for this. We're doing this. And so I look at them like, oh, people might look at me and go, wow, that guy is like lives such an interesting life. He's, might feel jealous or triggered by me. So I
I
have to understand
understand.
that like
Yeah.
I don't know you. And even if that person is this, person who just cares about money and superficial things and treats other people like shit, I would still be curious to know where did that come from, to try to connect with that person and try to understand why they are the way they are, because also that's not their fault either. If that's
Mm,
who they are,
yeah.
it's probably the way they were raised. And so I'm trying to let go of that judgment and bitterness, and
Yeah.
because it just doesn't serve anything, right?
Totally. I think it's so powerful to recognize that, like, when somebody has something I don't, my anger actually, like it actually a wound that's been opened up about a comfort I didn't have that I wish I had. I wonder what my life would have been like if I had that kind of privilege or that kind of comfort or security. And then you bring up the other point, like a big house can give you an illusion of freedom because you can move around. I don't know if you feel trapped in that house or how many secrets are. Maybe a big house holds more secrets. I don't know. You know?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good line.
Like there's a dark side to it too, potentially.
Yeah. I think also I mean I think that there's an attachment to, if you grew up in wealth, there's gonna like you probably aren't just gonna be, well, I'm just gonna get my little apartment that I always wanted. There'd be this expectation that you need to be making as much money and doing all these things that your parents were, that your family is.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those people do treat it like a status of, this is what you need to be, and you need to be making this amount of money, and you can't just be and exist. And then when you start to take that away from people, when you look at like even millennials that can't live the same life as their parents did, and they start to feel like that's worth their value, then if you don't have the self-awareness to be like, okay, yeah, life is tougher, it's hard, but like I have what I need. I'm just going to be grateful. I'm going to keep working hard, been trying to change the system and all this. Usually you're going to be like, oh, my worth, the thing that I learned was supposed to make me worthy of being a person, I can't do
Yeah.
anymore. So if you don't have that
Totally.
self-awareness, you're just going to get mad at everyone who does have that.
Yeah. No, I'm laughing at this millennial thing because, like, I mean, my family's always been like, it's important for you to own a home, own a home. That is the way to security. And I do own my condo in Toronto, and like, I wouldn't have if I didn't come from that family that emphasized it so much. But they also like helped me make it happen because I didn't have the wherewithal to do that. Not just wherewithal, like you can't save it. Like it's not easy to do. Like you can't just save it up, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think about the things that like the boomer generation, their expectations for us. So I'm thinking about growing up, if you grow up in that big house and you've got these expectations placed on you, expectations don't come with caveats that like, oh, things are different for your generation. Like my parents' generation, like they had to work hard to own their home and, it was a lot of money at the time that they bought it, but compared to now, it was like $4.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like your house costs like what lunch costs now. Like, are you joking?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so my point here is that the transmission of expectations intergenerationally doesn't come with the recognition of how economies, societies, cultures shift and change. And so you internalize an expectation. And so when you internalize an expectation and can't meet it, what you carry around with you is a sense of failure, you know?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, women who want to have children and cannot because they prioritized education and career, or because they met somebody later in life, or because their bodies just don't do what they want it to do or are expecting it to do, they've got a lot of grief because of those internalized expectations, right? There's It's already internalized. There's nobody sitting around being like, well, maybe they are being like, you're a bad woman for not having a kid, but they've internalized that for certain. And that's kind of painful. I think that those
Uh-huh.
expectations we internalize can be quite, I don't know if traumatic is too strong, but they sit
Yeah.
heavy with you, right? Because you're
Yeah.
like, I'm a failure, or I'm not fulfilling my purpose in the world, or I'm not achieving things that people before me did or wanted for me. It doesn't feel great.
Well, that's how I explain to, guys, like gay guys that feel shitty about their bodies. I say it's a trauma because you've been socialized to think that your body matters in how much you'll be loved or if people will love you. And so it's getting to, yeah, you can say, I hate my body. It just feels so ugly. But like, what is the pain that makes you feel like you don't have people that will love you? Like, right? Like, that's the message I want. You can keep saying the things about actually how you feel physically about your body, but it's about getting to that. And obviously we all got the message societally about
We
body
did.
image, but where is it that's so deep in you that you're not even able to be vulnerable and be yourself? And that's
Mm,
trauma, right? And I think
totally. It is.
and that's I think a lot of people still see trauma as I got into a car accident and it's got to be some sort I went to war. And it's like if we can all understand that we all have trauma just from being a human in society, then you can start to understand where a lot of these things come from. And I
Totally.
think if we were educated, all of us, on this stuff, I always say about even like psychology, it is a science. And so
Yeah.
when I see people that are like I'm struggling with being in relationships or sex or whatever, but I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to like deal with it. I'm like, okay, well, it's the same thing as like physics of trying to throw a ball. You can throw a ball into a hole, but if you know the physics, then you can probably have a better chance of getting the ball in the hole. And so
It's a
if you
great.
understand the psychology of yourself, then you'll be able to, oh, I'll be able to get there better because I know how to navigate my own inner workings. And I
That's
think
beautiful.
we still don't even understand that, right? Or most
Yeah.
people don't.
No, no, I hear that. I really love that analogy. Um, and like prioritizing learning about your own psychology is it can be really useful. And moving to the world in a more self-aware way is good for you. I think it cultivates important relationships. And I'm thinking about the body image, right? Like I think on the one hand, the example you gave was guys who learned that their bodies were a currency for attention, love, and affection. And I think about my own relationship with my body where I've been so critical of myself. And it's actually been a barrier to accepting, receiving, and acknowledging the love that already exists in my world. Right. So then I'm thinking, quite masochistic. There's love right here. And you're not willing to, you'd rather punish yourself over something arbitrary than accept the love that's right there. You have a community, you have people, and you're like, just criticizing yourself every day, but like, my body doesn't look nice. Okay, like, stop it. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I tell myself that all. I'm just stop it. You're insufferable.
Yeah.
Like, have love in your life. Let's move on.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I tell people to like think about it is it doesn't matter. You can think that. If you want to think that your body is ugly, go ahead and think, because I think it's one of the things that I always, when I try to say things about the way that I feel about my body or myself, I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's your opinion about it. And so to me to say like, oh, no, I'm going to try to think positive. It's like sometimes you can have those opinions and feel shitty about it, but just recognizing that it doesn't matter. And I think that's the thing that people don't get is that they still think it matters. Like when I see guys that so if I'm on Instagram and I'm flipping through and I see some hot guy who
Yeah.
just looks amazing and has a ton of followers, the first thing I do to fight that thought is I have no idea what that guy's life is like. And I have met way too many hot people who are a mess that I'm like, okay, it doesn't mean anything. So if you're hot, if you're comparing yourself to that hot person, what do you think? Do you think that person's life is better than yours? That they feel more happiness, they feel more joy, that they're better at sex? None of those things are necessarily true. It could be, but like it has nothing to do with the reason why their body looks the way that they are, that you can have connection, great sex, joy, all these feelings. It's the same way I think about like a singer at a concert. I've always thought about this that like if you're Taylor Swift and you're on stage, my thought is, oh my God, she must be having so much fun. But then I think, but is she having more fun than the person that's front row, or are they just feeling same feelings just in a different body? Do you know what I mean? Because if I think that because Taylor Swift has millions of people going to her concert, that she must be having a better time, I would be like her head would explode from the amount of joy that she'd be feeling. Or is she just feeling joy, like the joy that that person who's front row is feeling? Does that make sense?
It does. It totally does. And the way you're talking about joy, I think it's useful to make a connection between that and the way we talked about the way people express pain about the things that are going on in the world, either, vocally or on social media. Um, there's a limit. There's a limit of like how much pain you can feel, I think, or the threshold might increase, but even with joy, I think you kind of you recalibrate, right? Not everything's going to feel like an MDMA high. Like it might at
Yeah.
first, and then you recalibrate and you're like, okay, that's nice. That like there's acknowledgement of the range, And
Yeah.
then Taylor Swift recalibrates and she's like, okay, I've sold out a few arenas. That's fun. Now it's back. Like it still feels great, but that's just like, that's the job.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
like the hoopla is probably exhausting at times, Like you adjust to a new world, a new way of being. I think to your point about like we see somebody, oh, who's got this particular kind of body online and we imagine their world is amazing. I think we have to remember they experience joy in some ways and maybe they get attention in some ways that we don't or I don't or whomever doesn't. But there's a limit to that joy.
Hmm.
It's not endless and it doesn't
Mhm.
extend into all facets of life. There's a limit.
And I think that the practice of like how we were talking about being an activist and
Oh.
being feeling free in your body is that so for example about the body image issue that if you have a moment of shame and compare yourself to someone who you think is super hot, but then the practice that you do after that is okay, well I need to make my body look that way.
Mm.
Then you're not really feeling free in your body. You're still just doing what societal expectations allow you to do. So the practice of like
Yeah.
actually feeling free in your body, no matter what your body looks like anyone has the ability to do that in a moment, right?
Hmm.
It might be really hard, might be harder for other people. There's different
Sure.
levels
Yeah.
to it, but I think that that practice of getting to a place of ease and being like, I don't have to go along with the crowd and do what everyone else is doing. And I think there's this idea of if I do everything my ego tells me to do, I'm going to get to this place of like, look at, I made it. I'm Taylor Swift. I'm the most successful pop star. But to that, it's like, oh, but
Yeah.
she's just like following a formula and whatever. I don't know Taylor Swift's intention of what she's doing, something, but like, it's the formula of, okay, well, everyone's just going towards success. That doesn't necessarily mean they feel free in their body because now they're stuck to this. I need to maintain this
Mm,
to be worthy of a human being.
I hear that. I think if you've got markers of progress, whatever that measuring stick is in your life, it's worth it to take a step back and be like, if I follow this, is it actually bringing me joy? And if I follow through on this timeline, on this journey, in this direction, am I present while I'm doing it? Am I getting what I want out of it? Or is everything like sacrifice until some golden moment? Because, girl, that golden moment might not come. You better be enjoying the goddamn ride because that is what life is. So if you're not
Yeah.
enjoying the ride, switch train cars. Like, make
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if the process isn't fun and good and rewarding, make a change. Because, like, that is not only are you not enjoying your life, you're not free in your body, you're probably quite self-critical, and then you're putting yourself in a position where you have no choice but to be disconnected from people and real world issues because you're like, I'm failing at everything based on this measuring stick, and I'm like, my sadness for what life is taking up a lot of space. So you're disconnected from yourself and other people, let alone causes in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got to start wrapping it up, but I want to end off this. So what are you doing in your life personally to feel free, to feel joy in your life? What excites you the most about your life?
Well, I'm used to having a big community around. I'm used to trotting around cities like Toronto. And so right now my world is a lot smaller because I'm out here in Alabama. I've taken a liking to pistachios.
Yeah.
I really like to do a pot gummy and eat a
Yeah.
whole bag of pistachios. It feels really great. To be honest, I haven't been great at my self-care or cultivating a good relationship with myself in the last little bit. But what is feeling good is um, letting myself relax when I need to, listening to my body when I need to sleep in, not being hard on myself when I'm late for things. I hand in almost all my assignments late, and I just tell myself, you know what? Whatever. Who cares? Like, you get grades off, you get 5 points off per day. I'm like, you know what? If that system was really going to motivate me, it would have done so already, and I would have planned ahead, and I would have got shit done in advance. I haven't. I'm not going to be critical of myself. I could change next time, or I could just say I could just accept that I obviously don't care about it, or accept that like I do things last minute.
Mm.
So last minute that I feel the pressure to get things done after the deadline has passed. Great.
Mm.
Just accept it. You're gonna like, you know, that's just who you
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
That's your pattern. Don't be hard on yourself for it. Do it differently next time, or if not, just keep doing the same thing. Whatever.
Were you that way in school, like in high school and elementary school, like straight A student, always top of the class kind of guy?
No, 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 not no. Definitely not top of the class. Not straight A's. I think in middle school I was, in high school I was not. In university I certainly was not. My last couple of years of university I got really into my own, and I was like performing really well. In my master's degree, I did great. Like I got A's, but I handed everything in late. But I still did well. And I think that's when I really came into my own. And so I'm doing better now academically, but I think it's because I care about the stuff I'm doing. And it brings meaning to my life in a very real way, and like high school calculus did not. I just was like, so so things have shifted for me. And so my performance is better in things that I care about or I see meaning in. And that wasn't always the case. But handing things in late, My pattern since I could remember.
Yeah. See, the funny thing is, I'm a really bad procrastinator, but I would always, like, I would write in university, I would write a paper in a day. I would wait till the day before it was due, start and finish it, just be like, whatever. And I would always get it done. But I
Right.
was kind of lazy about it. Unless, again, it was something that I was interested in and like fascinated by, but I was like, oh, fuck it. Like, I'd rather just spend one full day like doing this work than even in high school, I was very like, why the fuck am I learning about like biology? I'm not going to become a scientist. Which I know my teenage self, I'm glad that I did have people being like, just get through high school.
Yeah.
But I was somewhat right of like, yeah, I can only do things that I like to do. It's like even social media. I'm not really great at social media. I feel very like nervous and anxious if I go on social media. I'm way better at this. Like I
Yeah.
realize the format I need to do
You're
is
great at this.
I love podcasts. I love talking to people. I'm not like a make a reel type of person and do little TikTok skits. That's not me.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
I have to find the stuff that works for me.
Totally.
That's just that's the way that I work.
Well,
Um,
here's to
but
figuring out what works for me in my life while
mhm.
I'm down south.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Vance. It was great to talk to you again.